you need to refuel. And I totally get it. I've been running book clubs for 15 years. I ran one for 14 years in a row without really taking a break. And I know, like any relationship without work, things get in a rut. And unfortunately, I've seen this happen with some libraries. They can even turn sour. But with a little help and advice from me, I'm going to get your group strong and re-energize it and get you down the path toward having a really great book discussion group that not only your patrons want to come to and your participants, but you want to be there. And I think that's the key, and we're going to talk about that at length. So here's what we're going to do today. I like to let everybody know ahead of time what's happening. So if you have a question and you see that it's going to come up, you can hold it till that time. But please feel free to send your questions in, and Joe will be monitoring those. So what are we going to do? I'm going to talk about why we even have book discussions, because I think it's important to really understand that before we talk about making them better. We're going to really spend time talking about your leadership and how you can reassess how you lead and ways you can improve. We're also going to talk about group dynamics because, you know, there's so much talk about book clubs, picking better books, which we're going to get to, better resources, which we're also going to get to, and the actual discussion. But I find that very few people talk about the group dynamic issue. It is not a library-specific issue, and that's an area I've done a lot of work in, and I feel like I've made myself and other groups stronger by looking at it from that angle. Again, as I said, better books, better resources, dynamic discussions. And I think the other last key that isn't discussed enough in these book trainings, book discussion trainings, is how you keep people wanting to come back for more. And again, I'm going to stress this over and over again. You are the leader and a participant. You need to keep wanting to come back for more. And I'm hoping today I'm going to give you that impetus to keep coming back for more. Okay, look, just like anything in life, once you've been doing a book discussion, for example, for a while, it's very easy to get stuck in a rut. One of the biggest reasons this happens, again, for both you and your group, is because you lose sight of why you started the book club in the first place. So before I go any further, whether you're starting your first book club or have been doing it for years, I want everyone out there to ask yourself, why? Why am I in the book club? Why am I having a book club, both as a library and as the leader? Why am I the one doing it? So think about yourself as a reader. Take yourself out of the library work. I'm sure many of you have finished a book and have been dying to talk to someone about it. I will admit that even I've given a book to a friend just to read, so I could have someone to talk about it with. In fact, that does remind me that the book we're going to be doing, if you're interested in coming to the leadership training, is The Winter People, and by Jennifer McMahon. And one of the reasons I'm doing that book, because it's in October and it's creepy but not scary, but also I want to talk to people about it. I really liked it, but there were some things I really want to work out and see what other people thought. So I'm doing that. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm energized to talk about it. I hope you are. People naturally want to talk about what they've read with each other. And this is the heart of why we even host book discussions at libraries. This is also why we have to remember what this book discussion is meant to be. Because the book discussion group differs significantly from a book talk or a book review in that it involves a dialogue, an exchange of ideas and impressions. And it's guided by the leader. And guided's a really important word here. It is not led by the leader. I use the word leader. It always makes me cringe because you're not the teacher. You're leading the group, but you're guiding the discussion because it's the participation of the group and each person's individual experiences with the book that he or she brings to the discussion and shares with everyone that makes it the worthwhile experience it is for everyone. You need to guide that, but not dominate it. So I want to say, though, that you have to remember, and I'm going to bring this up over and over again, not just the guiding, but that leadership, you have to remember, though. And I go back to the word leadership, even though I want you to think about it as a guide, because you are the leader. You're steering the ship, and it is challenging and rewarding. And I'm going to bring that up a bunch of times today. This is the heart of why we do book discussions, and reminding ourselves of it helps to recharge our own batteries. But it's also important to understand how book discussions fit within the mission of your library. So let's talk about library I just worked for. Their tagline is Leader in Literacy and Lifelong Learning, which is very common. Something like that is in a lot of libraries, mission statements. Book discussions fit in perfectly with that. It's the intellectual pursuit for both the participants and good news, yourself, that's key to why we do this. Book discussions are way more fun than school. But the people in my group still talk about how much they learn in book club, because it's a huge part of why they come and why all of you, both you and the participants, put in the effort. You want to learn, but you don't have to learn. When I get in the rut myself, I remind myself of all the intellectual value the group provides. It's why they keep coming. They may not know it consciously, but if they did not find intellectual value in the book club, they'd stop. In fact, this is why many at-home or friends that meet at restaurants book clubs fail, is because they get too far away from that intellectual pursuit. I hear it all the time for people who want help with their home book clubs, and I do a lot of that too. You know, we just don't talk about the book anymore, and nobody wants to. And I say to them, really? Because if they, I don't want to go anymore. And I say, really, they do want to, or you wouldn't have a book club. And if it really is truly you just want to get together, that's great, but don't make it a book club then. When it becomes more social and less about the discussion, you lose members because it's harder to justify taking time out of our busy lives if it's just to meet up and gossip. So here are some examples of lifelong learning values with titles. I want you to let you know that any time you see a cover in this slideshow, which is why you do need to go to RA for All to pull up the slides, you can actually click on that cover and get to notes on an actual discussion that I have led on this book. So you can see in more detail what I am talking about and examples. And later I'll talk about why keeping those notes and posting them is so important to me. I've also tried to mix up newer and older titles throughout the presentation, and the reasoning behind this will become clearer as we go on. But for the participants, the value in book club lies in sharing opinions and hearing counter opinions. Discussions allow participants to think about what they have read and compare their experiences with each other. They also allow members to learn more about parts of the book they didn't understand or just plain missed. Many people have come to my discussions over the years admitting they didn't like the book because they didn't get it. But once we discussed it, they felt better about the book, although they might not have changed their minds about whether they liked it or not. A great example of this was The Tiger's Wife by Tia Obrecht. If you read this book, it is not an easy book to get through. The entire thing is a metaphor, and some of it's in reality, and some of it is not, and some of it's a fairy tale, and there are different planes that you're reading the book on. However, we had a wonderful discussion, and although, again, not everybody agreed that they liked it, everyone left being glad they read it, and even more glad they read it for a discussion. Because it's an important thing to remember, not everyone is going to like every book. In fact, this is a guarantee for everyone at some point over time. Even if you're that person or you have that person who loves every book no matter what, there will be one they don't. And as I'm going to talk to you about later, it's actually better to pick a book people will either like or hate, because being in the middle does not lead to good book discussions. Some of my best discussions have been when two factions form and disagree over things point for point. An example of this was when we did the 13 linked story collection, Olive Kittredge, that won the Pulitzer Prize by Elizabeth Strout. We had people who absolutely loved that it was in stories and that Olive was not the protagonist of every story, and other people absolutely hated it. And we were able to go back and forth as to why people liked it a certain way or why they would have preferred it another way. And it opened up a huge discussion about how books are written, why we tell a story a certain way, what would be different if it was told differently, and what we learned about Olive, who is obviously the main character since her name is the title. Again, you can click through and read about that. But if everyone had loved the book, we never would have gotten into that serious discussion that we all really enjoyed. Further lifelong learning opportunities come from the fact that people will learn about new authors and books. They will always want to know if a book is autobiographical, where did the author's ideas come from, how does this book relate to other works by that author, and you will come prepared with this information to enhance their intellectual experience and increase yours too in the process. We'll talk about how to gather that info a little later. But another enjoyable outcome of having discussions is that participants get to meet people with a shared interest in reading. Over the course of the discussions, people get to know each other as they share intimate details about their lives and backgrounds in relation to certain books. This brings the group closer and often creates new friendships. However, you also have to be on guard for too much personal information and guide the discussion back to the book. A really great example of this is when we read Digging to America by Ann Tyler, which is about adopting foreign babies. It's still an excellent book for book discussions, even though it's an older title. A longtime participant actually brought her friend who had adopted 2 children this way, and in fact that member of the book club who brought her is the godparent of one of those children. And that woman came to share her experiences. It was a great extra bonus. I was notified ahead of time, so I was prepared for it, and we had wonderful discussions about how much the book got right and sharing personal information behind this experience. Okay. So that was the reminder as to why we go through all the effort to have book discussions, because let me tell you, I know it's a lot of effort. I hope that got you a little bit reinvigorated to remember how great the best meetings can be. But still, I understand it's hard sometimes. Groups get stuck in a rut over time. You need tips to shake things up. Okay, the first place you need to start, as I said at the very outset, is with yourself. Reassess your leadership. When things get stale, look at yourself first and make sure you are doing all you can to make the group work. First, again, you need to come to terms with the fact that the leadership role is challenging and rewarding. You will grow as a reader, which can only help you in all your work with leisure readers, whether they come to book club or not. As you read each new book with the group, you will be exposed to new ideas, new styles, new authors, even more. But as a leader, you will be challenged to examine each book's its themes and ideas and decide whether you agree with them or not. As a leader, you are not expected to know everything. I think that's one of the things that people find the most scary. You are not. Just like you're not at the reference desk expected to know the answers. But you must provide focus to the group. Again, putting the focus on the group dynamic, not on the actual discussion of that book. This means you need to question your own initial responses to the book. So, for example, why did the author's words move you? Why do you dislike a certain character? Not just, I hate them. Why? Why did the author do that? Was it on purpose? Were you supposed to like that character, but you actually just didn't for another reason that's maybe completely independent from the book and has to do with you personally? What are the author's intentions? And did that author succeed or fail? Being the reader does also require you to do some research. You should be able to introduce the author and give some background about him and her and the book before you begin. I actually like to do it the meeting before also, and we'll talk about that at the end. That's part of the keep them coming back for more. Having critical information to interject during the discussion is great too. We will talk about how to do this a bit later, but the point is you're bringing the details to enrich the discussion and keep it moving and open new avenues of exploration. As I said, it is challenging, but rewarding. I do need you to ask yourself a few questions, though, when you're reassessing your leadership. Okay, first you need to think about how long has it been since you have participated in a book group. And that's a really big problem with a lot of book discussion leaders. That's why I'm offering the class in October for book discussion leaders who would like to be part of a book discussion group. I feel like it's different when you lead a book club, and it needs to be led a little differently. You'll be frustrated if you just show up maybe at your friend's book club, or the worst, even worse, they'll make you lead it because you lead book clubs. The other way you can do it, and I'll talk about it also more in October, but the Adult Round Table, which I'm a member of the steering committee, we do offer book discussion leadership training, and there'll be a link for that later, 4 times a year, where people can, it costs $10 to join, and for that $10, you can go up to 4 a year for free at different libraries all around the area. I just think it's a really great idea for everybody who's doing stuff. Okay, so that's the support group for book club leaders. Make sure you find one. Even if you just call your friends at local libraries or the other librarians at your library. When I worked at the Berwyn Library, we had a staff book club, and it was mostly those of us who led book discussions. And it was also a great way for staff who are interested in learning about book discussions, find a way to do that. But then ask yourself, okay, even if you've been going to book groups, you have a book group book discussion support group. Are you burnt out? It's okay to be burnt out. That's part of reassessing your leadership. Sometimes the answer is, you know what, I need a break. I need to stop leading book clubs for a month or two, not even be in a book club, and just take a break. You'd be shocked how much a break re-energizes you. I have to tell you, I had 2 breaks for the 14.5 years I led the same book club, and they were when I was on maternity leave both times. And they were only, I think, 2 or 3 book clubs. I think the second child, it was only 2. And it was great just to re-energize me. It made me want to come back for more. If you let your group know, look, I have some stuff going on. In my case, it was easy. It was obvious. I was growing and going to have a baby. But otherwise, you just need to tell yourself and say, you know, I just need a break. Someone else needs to do this. it's going to be for the best of my group. Okay, so that's the question you have to ask yourself. But my favorite way to reassess leadership is to create leadership norms. I'm going to talk to you about group norms next and what norms are in a little more detail. But here are the ones I created for myself. These are norms that I agree to hold myself to. Okay? We're going to talk about how we let people know that I'm leading these norms. But here are my norms. This is the bare minimum I have found that I need to do. I have told my group I will provide for them. I will read the entire book. You know, you might be laughing there, but there are so many book club leaders who do not read the entire book. Gather information to help enhance the discussion. I'm going to be prepared to offer counter opinions. This one's important. As the leader, even if those counter opinions differ from your own, you need to be ready for those, because your job is to guide the discussion. And if everyone is like, boy, this was the best book we ever read, gosh darn it, you have to be like, well, here's somebody who hated the book. And those are those one-star reviews on Goodreads or Amazon, and we can talk about those in a little bit about doing that. But you need to be prepared with that. Be prepared to begin new lines of discussion when necessary. Again, I'll talk about this as we're doing it, but you have to always be one step ahead of the group. Challenging but rewarding. Do not let one person monopolize the discussion. Now, you will see shortly in my group norms, I have a little bit of tricks that you're going to put the onus on them to not do this. It works wonderfully. Trust me, I have a very difficult person who I control this way very easily and very politely. Also, be willing and prepared to take control of the group firmly but respectfully. These norms are actually given to my group. I will talk about ways to do that in a way that is not like you're telling them what to do. It works wonderfully. But if you see this, if your group knows you're going to take control if it gets out of hand, they do not mind when I would stand up and be like, guys, we're out of control here. Too many people talking. Let's be respectful, you know, and I'm trying to take control here. They know it's a norm. It helps a lot of problems. Okay, but another way to reassess your leadership, but a book club isn't a rut only is the fault of the leaders. Have the group take a hard look at themselves too. By the way, let me go back for 1 second. This is not a lot to ask, by the way. This is a bare minimum of leading discussions. Okay, you need to hold the group responsible because they have an equal part in the responsibility of the success of the book group. You may be the leader, but they are providing more than half of what's going on. Acknowledge that things have not been going perfectly, by the way. Tell them, you know, I've noticed we need to do a little something. Things aren't going right. They are going to be relieved that you noticed. So start this reassessment by going back to the start of my presentation and talking to them about, well, why do you come? One of the best successes I've had when I've been reassessing the group dynamic and having people really take control, equal control with me, and equal responsibility with me over the fate of our group, I go around and I say, why are you here? Let's talk about it. And I often go first, and I say, here's why I'm here. And it's not just because I'm getting paid, because someone else could do it. Quite honestly, there was a point when I was so busy that I should have given off the book club to someone else, but I had reasons. I really enjoyed being part of that group. It was probably the best thing I did every month at that library. Use this open dialogue, though, as a chance to shake things up. I do have some ideas here on how you can shake things up, but I would like to preface this by number one, saying just because you're shaking things up, no one's going to get hurt. I say this all the time. I'm like, it's just books. No one's going to die. Okay, let's just move forward. But also, I also want to stress, I've had people say this to me after I've done a talk like this. Oh, I tried all your things. Do not try all of the shaking up. That's like an earthquake. That is too much. These are some various recharge activities that I have tried over the years with my group and other groups and myself. Each one has worked, but not with the same group necessarily. And this also brings up an important point that even the best book groups need an occasional jostle to get things going. Okay, here are my examples. You may have different ones. The point is that everyone get out of their comfort zone, but still keep this actively tied to why we have the book club. One of my best tricks is to survey library patrons who do not already come to your group. And I've heard this from other leaders. There's a great example with Skokie, and if anybody really has a difficult group, you should contact me with the contact information at the end, and I'll get you in touch with Lynn Ann Pearson at Skokie, who had a very difficult group and had to really work hard to bring new people in. Because sometimes the group gets a little too cliquey and people don't want to join, or you're too involved with yourselves after so many years, you're forgetting if you are including everybody who comes to the library. So every once in a while I do a survey of patrons who do not come to book group but who come to the library. It's always great to like offer a free fine coupon, or if you can get like a gift card from a local business as an incentive for filling out the survey, putting it online. Ask them just general questions about book club. When is the best time for you? Are you interested in coming to a book club? When is the best time for you? What types of books do you want to read? See if that jives with what you're already offering. If it is completely different, then you might have to have different book clubs. It doesn't mean you should scrap the one you have. It means maybe you should be adding more if the one you have is doing well. But also, if it's going great, maybe you need more advertisement to get some new blood into your book club. I find September is the best time, September and October, once kids go back to school, that you get tons of new members. I got like 3 retired teachers who joined last year in September because they had taken the summer off. They retired at the end of the school year, took the summer off, and then they were looking for something to get back into. But they didn't know we had book clubs. But I learned over the years to revamp the advertisement for book clubs come fall. Okay, but here's something else. You can, if you love your group and you just need to do something different, why don't you all read a different book? Again, listen, no one's going to get hurt. That might sound sacrilegious to some of you, but why not everybody read one book in the same genre? Say, you know what? Everybody's been saying we need to do different books. Let's do science fiction. Everyone's talking about this Martian movie that's coming out. Maybe it's too hard to get our hands on The Martian, but let's all read, that'll come up later, by the way. Let's all read a different science fiction book that's similar. You could provide a suggested list or tell people read whatever you want in science fiction. Or what about an Anything Goes book club? I used to host a book club called the Book Lovers Club. It met at a bar outside the library, but you can do this in the library, where everyone just comes to talk about a book that they've read recently that they really enjoyed. And we just had discussions about books we've enjoyed. And people just shared. And as I'm going to talk about later, I took notes just like I do in my regular book club. And it was wonderful because everyone could just take the burden off of reading a specific book. People love sharing something they've read with other people. Talked about it at the very beginning. Why not do that? You could even do that once a year in your book club, twice a year if you need a little more shaking. Which brings me up to meet somewhere else. Again, meeting at a bar is a great idea, but one time we were having some air conditioning issues at the library, and we met at another library, with obviously letting them know ahead of time. We all loved the field trip. All of us were like, this was so much fun. We should do this again. I've also had book groups meet at someone's house over the holidays so they could have maybe some festive beverages and exchange Christmas presents. You don't have to do it all the time, but if you really need to shake things up, go to a local library meet. And then organize a tour of that library with the people there that are in charge of book clubs. Because library patrons who love book clubs love libraries because they come all the time. So why not get them on a tour of another library? Trust me, they love that stuff, especially if they get to go behind the scenes. Add a movie to the mix. The Martian's going to come up a lot because it's that new title that's hot. That's a great book, and the movie's getting great early reviews. Add a movie to the mix. For a couple years, my book group, every single December, read a book and watched the movie, and we had a big party during it. That way, no one had to finish the book. We weren't even expected to have a discussion. We had a lunch. We talked about the book a little bit, and then we watched a movie. It was either based on the book or connected to the book in some way. So like we read that Julie and Julia about Julia Child, and the book went back and forth, but we read actually one of Julia Child's memoirs and watched the movie. We didn't read the Julia and Julia book. It's great. Or, talking about party, have a party for no reason. Start the new year off with a party, the New Year Book Club. Have a party on a different day of the week. Do something. Meet somewhere to have a party. Just have a party. It's fun. These people love reading books. It doesn't always have to be about reading the book. But as I mentioned, we're going to have group norms because even with a shakeup, permanent change requires that the group establish their own norms. Here are the ones that my group agreed to. Note, this does not mean that they always followed them. Here are the norms. Theirs are fewer than mine. I'm trying to keep the balanced power. I want them to know that I expect more from me, but I still expect something from them. Make your best effort to complete the book. Remember, mine was finish the book. I have to finish it. You need to make your best effort. Come ready to both share and listen. This should be on every single group norm ever. This is the one I bring up when people are talking too much. I'll say, Sandy, remember we agreed to share and listen. They all need to be ready to back up their opinions with the why. The one thing I would get visibly not angry but upset with my book club people was when they said to me, this book was drivel, or this character was annoying. That's fine. Why? Why do you feel that way? And if they'd be like, I don't know, I just didn't like them, did the author do that on purpose? And sometimes you can't get that person to share, but if you're thinking about making them do the why, and they're thinking about it, they're going to come ready to do it, and someone else is going to chime in because they've all agreed to these norms. That's a fantastic way I've dealt with some of my most difficult patrons. What I say to them is, you need to back that up with why. And now I got to the point where they come in and be like, I hated this book, but here's why. Where it used to be just like, I hated it, it was awful, and then shuts up. And it just really kills the vibe in the room. Even if more people liked it, a strong opinion person like that is killing the vibe. Remind people that they need to self-censor. I realize that ready to share and listen, backing up your opinions with why, and self-censor are sort of saying the same thing 3 different ways, but all of you lead a book club, and you know this needs to be said. And my last one, I try to make positive. We talk about library signage, and at the library we want to try to be saying yes as much as possible. It's not, no cell phones in the library. It's please keep cell phone use to such and such floor. So have a great time. That's my positive norm. I end with a positive norm. And put it back on me, because I am the leader. If you stop enjoying yourself, let me know. I need to know. If we're going to make this effort to improve our group dynamic, you need to let me know. Okay, now let me talk about norms in general. To get the maximum value out of the leadership and group norms, it is best if both sides see both. In fact, it's even better if you take a break in one of your Shakeup meetings and create these together, which is what we did originally. I want to also say that I originally got this idea from my kids' elementary school, where at the start of each new school year, the students and teachers got together and they would brainstorm and create their classroom norms for the entire year. It is highly effective and lets everyone know up front what is expected from them, and they created it themselves. When there are issues, you have a group-created plan for dealing with it. I can say to someone who is over-talking, remember, we need to share and listen, or we have all agreed to self-censor, so let's give everyone a chance. Total Freudian slip. This is less embarrassing for me and them when I have problems to address. So, because nobody's embarrassed, I can say, you have to agree and listen. You agree to share and listen. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Oh, and I should say, by the way, with these norms, the way I would do these, let me go back. I would type them up on a half sheet of paper, both of them. I printed them out on cardstock, and I laminated them. Everyone got a list with both on one sheet, but I actually would bring them to the meetings, and I could hold them up, and I could say, hey, leadership norm, I'm doing this. A group norm, you're doing that. And everybody knew to do it. Some people kept the piece of paper and brought it to every single meeting, which was adorable. Then every single December, when we were having our lunch, we'd bring out the paper. I'd, again, bring out one sheet with the group and leader norms, and we would literally workshop it. We'd scribble out. We'd change. I know last year we made a couple revisions in December, but mostly the first 2 years we had some bigger revisions where we crossed out a couple group norms, and then we even took out 1 or 2 leadership norms because they said, oh, no, that's for us to handle. You have, So, and then the ones we've had have pretty much stayed the same for a couple of years, so it's worked out really well. Okay. Now, of course, I've talked about the dynamic. That's really important, that we need to make sure we're looking at the group and leader dynamics. Look at how you're working together. This is the one area where librarians aren't really doing anything in terms of training. That's more of a business thing, and we're going to talk about that down later. Oh, look, there's the Martian again, too. It's going to be an all Martian. I'm trying to keep it up to date. Okay, pick better books. I instituted a dictatorial democracy many years ago, and let me tell you, it was the greatest decision I ever made. What is my dictatorial democracy? Well, people who come to library book clubs, whether they admit it or not, want you to exert some control over the book. If they wanted a complete democracy, they'd meet at their house. They'd be in charge. But instead, they come to you because they want some guidance. Not a full dictator, just a little. And we meet in the middle, and I really believe strongly in this. I can tell you from experience that groups that only let the librarians pick the titles, or even only let the club do it with a majority vote, will encounter problems. Even if it's all hunky-dory now, I promise you it will ultimately fail. I'm being brutally honest in order to help you. Here is what I do very shortly as a dictatorial democracy. Again, this has been revised over years. We started with a complete librarian control, then we had complete democracy, and this is what you do. So we are voting, but the ballot has been rigged, and the results are slightly manipulated. About month 3, we do books every 6 months. We pick them every 6 months. At about month 3 in the cycle, I remind people to bring their suggestions to month 4. If by month 4, give them to me at the desk so I can get them in the list of choices. And there's about I think it's always a front, back, and a front. So 3 pages of choices, both fiction and nonfiction, with descriptions of both the author title, page count, because some people care about that. Our group also has a rule. It has to be 400 pages or less. That was a rule we decided on years ago, and we do reassess that every year, even though it's not in the group dynamic. And there's also one page of nonfiction. The group tends to do 4 fiction to 2 nonfiction every cycle, give or take a book or 2. And on that, then the last page is actually a separate sheet that is a ballot. We're voting for 6 months. There are many choices. Some of them are choices that people suggested. Because I have people suggest them to me in email or in writing or at the desk, nobody knows, everybody's suggestions. I vet them to make sure that they are discussable first. There's my first little tutorial move in there. If I don't feel they are, or they're not widely available, or they're not available in large print or audio for those people who need those, I let the person who suggested know that it won't be included. I think you have to show that courtesy and say, I'm using my professional judgment. At this time, we are not including it. Give them a list to vote. We're voting for 6 months. This is very key. There are 8 choices. What? 8 choices? There's only 6 months. I used to do only 6 choices. When I had only 6 choices, I would have maybe 1 clear winner and then 7 or 8 that all got about the same amount of votes. When you have 8 choices, the tends to sort itself out a little bit better. Get maybe 2 or 3 that are clearly ahead of the rest, and then you have maybe 5 for those last 3 spots or so, and then you can look at what you already have that everybody wants to do. And here's a little more of that dictatorial democracy. I only include the ones that got a significant number of votes, but I take then from that group, if they got 1 or 2 votes, I throw it out even if I really want to do it. I'm not a full dictator. But that group in the middle, I look at what we already have. How are they going to work together? Are some of the books going to connect well? I really spend time putting that librarian expertise in there and make it a good 6-month experience for people. So that's how that works. If you want to know more about that or see a ballot, you let me know and I can send you one. All right. You also need to educate participants into what makes a good choice. And that's going to be on the next slide. Because then they'll stop suggesting books. Like they won't say, why aren't we reading James Patterson? Which happened for years until I brought in a list of what makes something a good book to discuss. But it's also, if you've educated them on what makes a good choice, it's going to be much easier to diffuse problems when no one likes a book. You could say, you might not like it personally, but here's why it was a good book discussion book choice. Also, we have to remind people to agree to disagree. Finally, if you're picking better books, take a look at what's hot and look at it from a different perspective. Same ballpark, different game. Why not do Mary Roach's nonfiction Packing to Mars, about actually going to Mars with a little bit of humor, instead of The Martian? Please do not try to read The Martian this fall. No one will be able to get the book. Everybody, it'll be, your timing's not going to be right. Some people have seen the movie. It's going to be too popular. Let them read it on their own for fun. But understand that it's really popular. Understand that psychological suspense a la Gillian Flynn is still super popular, but pick a different book. This slide used to have Shirley Jackson, We've Always Lived in the Castle, on it, because I love doing that. It's short, so people love the break because it's a novella. It's totally the beginning of the creepiest of psychological suspense, and it goes with what's so popular. You know, you can't really do Girl on the Train for book club. I keep seeing it's so popular. I've read it. It is so plot heavy. It's not going to make a good book discussion book, as we're going to talk about on the next page. But why not give them a classic Shirley Jackson to read instead? So anyway, think about it differently. Same ballpark, different game. And as I mentioned, here are some more professional tips you can use to pick better books. What makes a book good for discussion? Probably the most important criteria is that the book is well written. Often talking about language and how the book is constructed is one of the most popular talking points of a book. Over time, my group has compared books from one month to another this way. You know, these books aren't alike at all, but here's the way that I feel like they are in the way they're written. Or especially when we read nonfiction. There'll be a book on a slide coming up that we read, and I'll point it out, that was a nonfiction popular book about World War II. It's one of those unforgotten books. And we had read a different one, Girls of Atomic City, that was written more in a, both of these will be later, but Girls of Atomic City was written more narrative nonfiction, like a story. And then another book we're reading, which the title is escaping me, but it'll come up in a few minutes. It's on a slide, which was also a sort of hidden story of World War II that dealt with women, but it was written much more journalistically. It was very interesting. We read them maybe a year apart, but people would say, you know, I really liked Girls of Atomic City more because it was written in a more narrative style. And then another person said, you know, this is the book I liked. It's so much more journalistic. It was I was so proud of them, but because we pick books because of how they're written, we're picking books that others have said, critical reviews have said are worth your time. We don't like to use well-written when we're describing books to patrons, but we do need to understand that when we're doing book discussions. But even more than that, books that explore basic human truths, family, life and death, personal struggles, moral issues, all of those are great fodder for discussion. Good books for discussion also have three-dimensional characters who are forced to make difficult choices under difficult situations and whose behavior and choices may or may not make sense to you. I cannot stress that enough. It might not be that they're likable, but they are three-dimensional. A lot of book discussion people who love to read, I have found that maybe 60% of the people in my group really want a character that they can love, fall in love with, to love a book. But they have learned over the years that they might sometimes hating a character makes for a better book discussion. The perfect example for this, and I can't change it because I haven't found a better example, is Atonement by Ian McEwan. And I will forever remember a book discussion I led with my class at Dominican University, and I will literally never forget this. The room it's in doesn't exist anymore, but I can still picture it. A woman, during the discussion, if you've read that book or seen the movie, you know that there's an unreliable narrator. Bryony is our narrator. There's a point at which you either are so angry at her or you're just like, oh, that stunk. I'm more of a, oh, that stunk, but what a cool book. I had a woman who was so mad at Bryony, she stood up during the discussion, stared down from above at the person who had been defending Bryony as a narrator and why the author was why Ian McEwan used her in this way. And the person was so much in hatred of Bryony that she stood up and pointed to them and started screaming at her like she was Bryony. I obviously reasserted control, but that is a book that got people's blood pumping. Three-dimensional characters, ones that there's no right or wrong answer, ones that are, you just want to spend an hour talking about the character. I calmed her down. I reminded her that the reason she feels so passionate, and this is a trick I use all the time in book discussions, you feel this passionate about this character because the author wrote the person that way. She's not real. And the people are like, oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. I'm reestablishing control. But I said, but that's great. The author made you feel that way. Why? How could an author do that? Make you feel real anger that you got up and yelled at someone. That's powerful. Bring it back. But those three-dimensional characters will do that. Good book discussion books also present the author's views of an important truth and may send a message to the reader. And during a book discussion, you're really talking about everything the author has not explicitly said. What the author said, that's a book report. For this reason, books that are heavily plot-driven, most mysteries, westerns, and romances, don't generally lend themselves to discussion. These leave little more to say than I liked the book or I hated a book. A discussion requires ambiguity. Three-dimensional characters provide that. But speaking of ambiguity, open or even ambiguous endings are perfect for book discussions. Although I should note that this will not please everyone and make some of them extremely angry. Some will be driven crazy by not knowing what happened. Again, I remind these participants that, one, this ambiguity means more discussion opportunities for us. When there's something really ambiguous, and Digging to America, which was a few slides ago, if you read my book discussion notes, it ends with an extremely open ending where there's a knock on the door and we don't know if the person answers the door or not. And we were able to have a discussion. Just like I went around the room to vote. I do this a lot. You'll see it in my notes. Did she open the door? Yes, no. Go around. Okay. She opened the door? Yes. What do you think happened? She opened the door? No. Why? It's nothing about the book. It's nothing in the book. It's the ambiguity, and we discuss it. and we have fun doing that. But also, you can say the author chose to leave it open, so answer that question. Like I was just saying before about characters. Why did the author do that? There's a reason. They don't just come up, not have ideas. There's a reason they leave you hanging. Sometimes taking it away from the character's fate, which people get very wrapped up in, helps to calm the people down who are not happy about that. Okay. Another good choices are books with a unique style, frame, or setting. Again, these all make great discussable topics on their own. For example, my book club read the graphic novel Fun Home. It's a memoir of which we'd read many, but just discussing the difference of reading a memoir in prose versus reading a memoir in graphic novel was great. And don't be afraid. My group is mature women, some of whom had never read a graphic novel. It went over spectacularly. We also read a book called Bury Me Standing by Isabel Fonseca, which will show up on a slide later. It's a nonfiction title about the Gypsy people. And although none of us really liked the way she wrote the book, we all loved the frame because we learned so much. So we were like, I wish she had told it differently. So although we didn't enjoy the reading experience, we loved everything we learned because it had a unique setting and a unique frame, something outside the ordinary, tied to our reality in some way. Finally, tread with caution on very popular titles, as I mentioned, or media sensations. They are hard to get your hands on and often disappoint because they are popular, yes, but they may not be discussable. If I were in a room and could see you, I would ask you to raise your hands on how many of you had somebody come to your desk to either, one, ask for you to do 50 Shades of Grey as a book discussion book, or who came and said, my book group is reading 50 Shades of Grey. What's that about? I'm just like, oh. In fact, I use a rule of thumb that the book must be available in paperback because, one, then it's cheaper to get your hands on to provide copies, and there's more available in the library system because libraries, like the one I used to work at, buy book discussion copies. And also because it gives the book time to cool off. Is it still worth reading after the hoopla has died down about 12 to 18 months later? Okay. Now, there are some proven winners, and I'm going to show you some resources to find those, but please don't forget the backlist. That's where your titles are. Okay, here's where I'm going to want a little bit of participation from all of you when I'm done with this slide in the notes, because I would love to crowdsource titles that are unique that worked for your group. So right now I'm going to talk about very few couple that I've done that I have found work really well. But please start sharing any titles that are not the ones that everybody's doing that you've done that you want to share with all of us. And then Joe's going to put together a list, and I'll post it on my blog so we can all help each other crowdsource a list. But all these covers link to the full discussion notes. You can also use links to get back to every one that I've read in my book group, or that I've led as a book group, whether my Berwyn book group, my Adult Reading Roundtable book group, or the Dominican University one that I've done. Some of these are titles you may not have heard of. Here's why I did some of these. I'm not going to go over all of them. Again, you can look at them yourself. Rush Home Road, the third one in there on the top. Top is fiction, bottom is nonfiction. Rush Home Road, Lori Lansons wrote a book called The Girls a couple of years ago. It's more than a couple of years ago now. That was really popular. We never got around to reading it in book club. Instead, we went back and read one of her debut books. It's always a great trick. Read a debut book by an author everyone's talking about. I have steered so many book groups to reading Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. First of all, I think it's a better discussion book, and it has less of that media sensation. People haven't seen the movie and the book and haven't over-talked about it. It's also great to talk about. You know that people might have read the more popular book, and if you do the opening book, the debut book, there's a little more, well, how has the author grown? How has the author changed? Were you surprised by this? You can have that whole discussion. Rush Home Road was a great book. It is an under-the-radar book that not many book clubs do. Again, click through to read my report. But if there's only one book on this top level that I think every group should do, it is Henning Mankill's Italian Shoes. This book has stayed with me forever. There's a scene in this book of an anthill growing in a house, in a bedroom, that I will never lose sight of in my mind. I still have people talk to me about that. And it's Henning Mankill, yes, the guy who wrote the Wallander Mysteries. So a lot of your people in your book club know who he is, but it's not a mystery. This is a slim, haunting, amazing story about a man living sort of in solitude up in the Nordic lands. And it's not really coming of age, but it's sort of how he finds himself as an older person and how he learns to live his life to its fullest, given the life he has in front of him. I don't want to give much away. It is a haunting book. It's also short, but there's so much talk about the language, the imagery, It's a book every library owns because it's Henning Mankell, and it's going to be a surprise to everyone. On the bottom shelf, I just want to point out, there's that Girls of Atomic City. You can click through. I mentioned that. But The Lemon Tree. The Lemon Tree is an older title. It's been around a long time. It's about, as you can see on the screen, it's about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It is Rosh Hashanah today, so there you go. But it tells the story of the beginning of the conflict through one lemon tree on the property of a family, Palestinian family's home. And that family is kicked out during the Six-Day War, and the Jewish family that moves in, and how the two young people that live there later in life try to reconcile. I still have people read this book to understand all of the problems in the Middle East, and it's a great way to start a conversation about current events, but taking it back in an extremely readable title. So there you go. One last reminder about picking books. You need to remember, again, to remind everyone that not every person in the group is going to like every book. One other tip when you're doing that is remind everyone that they bring their own unique history, memories, background, and influences, and reading tastes to the book. All of these differences influence the reader's experience of a book and leads to why he or she may or may not have liked it. But this is exactly where your discussions flourish. These differences get to the heart of why people join and participate in book clubs in general. So please share some of those great books you've done. And again, all of those you can click through and read detail as to why we loved those discussions. Okay, but where do you find all these books? I'm going to talk about some of my favorite resources right now. Please note they are used for both identifying books and finding discussion questions. So when I mention that later, I'll have the link again. Often people forget to use the questions before they pick books. Here's a really big tip. Questions are a good way to see what the main themes and issues of the book are without reading it. You can run that against the general tips I just went over in the previous slide, too. So if you go to this link, which I actually am going to go to now because I didn't want to reproduce this on the slides, and I know this post is from 2013, but as you'll see, I updated it last week. These are my favorite book discussion resources that are free. I want to note you guys are all in Illinois libraries, and Novelist does have book discussion resources. And what's great about those is if a title has a book discussion report, it's an essay question. Like it's an essay question and then an answer. Those are particularly good to use if you're picking books to see what the themes are. What I suggest for people to understand how to use those better is to actually pick a book you've read and led a discussion on already and go read the book discussion report on Novelist and then see what you can compare from what was there in the book discussion report through what you experienced, and you'll get a sense of how you can use those to help you pick books. It's really a great trick that I use a lot. And some of people I know I've met want to read every book before they discuss it. I will tell you that is too much for me. I have so many books I want to read in so little time, I'm not going to read them twice. This is a great way to do that, to sort of quote-unquote read the book in detail first, specifically for a book discussion audience. So Lit Lovers is my absolute first stop. They have everything from reviews to lists of popular book club picks to articles on running your book club. You can also find questions there, and there are also social networking options. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more in detail in a couple slides, but they're my first stop for all book discussion planning. Reading group guides is the gold standard in book discussion resources, although I'm going to tell you I don't feel like it's as responsive as Lit Lovers is anymore, but I do like how there's a way to search lists of possible books by genre, and there's a link there. Booklist Reader puts all of its book group posts under one tag, which you can access. It says here, but under the word Booklist Reader. What I like about this content is that it covers everything. Reading Group Choices is that one that I always forget about, and I sign up for their e-newsletter, which helps me remember, and it really is a great site. It's been around since 1994. They started as print, and now they are online also. They have some of the best backlist gems you're going to find, and especially if you go to like their favorites from 7 years ago, I have found great discussion books that way. I think I found Rush Home Road that way a bunch of years ago. And then Book Movement is a resource geared toward book club members. They encourage you to join and share your group's experiences with them. And with that information from about 32,000 groups, they're able to crowdsource information for lists like the National Book Discussion Bestseller List. I have a little tip there, which I worked on because they've changed the site a little. If you go to Book Movement, that link should work, but if not, it tries to make you think you have to be a member to see stuff. You do not. Just go to bookmovement.com with nothing after the slash, and you should be able to get in. I really like that book discussion bestseller list that they have every week. They also put it up on a couple other websites that you might get access to see it. And you can see what's really hot. One, stay away from those books possibly because they're going to be hard to get. But remember when I said to sort of take what's hot and look at it a different way? Girl on a Train is one of the top books. Do not discuss that book. It is too plot heavy. But think about what is it about that book that's drawing people, and it's that psychological suspense angle and that unreliable narrator and that twist. There are plenty of books you can use to do that. Okay, let's go back to what we're doing here. Okay, what are other ways you can pick better books? Travel to the past. Look at old bestseller lists, old book group favorites, old awards. I sort of mentioned that with reading group choices. That is the best way. But I've even seen groups do this, and it works really well. Take a year. Say, we're going to do 1987, just picking it out of nowhere, and then read the major award winners for that year. That can be your book group. What was going on that year? And even if like you only maybe said you're doing it, let's say, a 6-month schedule, and you pick the 6 major winners. Maybe you're doing the Nobel Prize winner, and everyone's reading a book, and you're doing the Pulitzer. You can have a month or two where you're talking about what happened that year, the current events, and put it in perspective. Watch the movie that won the Oscar that year. I've seen groups do that. Just take a year, spread it out over the whole year, and have fun with it. These are particularly good in anniversary years and just revisiting. A really great resource for that is Bookmarks magazine, which most libraries get. They do a recap. They pick a year every magazine issue, and they give you all the major things that happened, the bestsellers, the award winners, and the news headlines. You could just take that page and do that for that year. It'll be really fun. Also, consider a teen and or children's award winners, too, to read those. You know, a book I'm really excited to do with a book group, I'm going to try to find a group to do it with, is El Defo, which was one of the Newbery finalists last year. It wasn't the winner, and it's a graphic novel. I've read it. I think it's wonderful, and I'm really dying to discuss it with adults. Another children's book that works fantastically with adults is Wonder, and most of you will know that book. But there's obviously teen books are a great way to do that, too. What are other libraries doing, both near and far? Why aren't you asking other librarians what they're doing? Why aren't you looking at what my library group is doing, my book group? Why aren't you, you know, going just pick a state far away and see what are those libraries doing, or a library you like or you visited recently? See what they're doing. How's it going for them? Give the person who leads the book clubs a call. They'd love to talk to you. I love talking to book club leaders about what they're doing. I get so many great ideas. That's why I'm asking you to help crowdsource a list, so I can get good ideas and look brilliant. We can all help each other. But, you know, that's one of the reasons I post my book discussion notes. Those are my most popular posts by far. The other day I had a whole bunch of people going to a really old, I was looking at my stats, a really old book discussion had 80 visits. I'm assuming there was a book group that did it, and they passed on the links. And it's wonderful. So take a look at that to find books. What books worked for them? Okay, let's prepare for the discussion. First rule, don't over-prepare. I have a whole slide on it, but don't over-prepare. This leads to bad discussions. I have seen this happen. Although you should mark interesting pages and make a few notes about overall themes if you want, you should not prepare a 10-page essay on the book. That will just lead you down the path of teaching the book instead of guiding the discussion. Also, over-preparing will make you less flexible as the discussion progresses. Flexibility is your biggest weapon. Now, I got the don't out of the way. Again, with the whole let's be positive. That's your only don't. Don't over-prepare. In fact, if you think you should do more, stop. Let the discussion come to you. But let's focus on the do's. As you read, think about the themes and issues that are arising more than what is happening. Look, you all are good readers. You get what's happening. I stop worrying about plot when I'm reading a book for book discussion and think about the whys, always the whys. Again, if you've looked at the questions ahead of time, this will tip you off as to what those big themes might be. That's what I love about looking at the questions. I clearly know, oh, there's a coming-of-age theme here. Let me pay attention to that. Or loss is a huge theme in this book before I even start it. So I'm on the lookout for that. Think about what those themes are, too, and how the author realizes them as you're reading. Get to know your characters. Place yourself in the book and think of them as you do the people around you. Think about their faults, their motives, what it would be like to interact with them. How does the author portray them? Notice the structure of the book. How is it used to create a mood or illustrate an important concept? Are the chapters prefaced by quotes? If yes, do they add to the book? Because, you know, sometimes they don't. How many narrators are there? What point of view did the author choose to tell the story with? Are there flashbacks? Do they help move the story along, or are they distracting? Why did the author write the book the way he or she did. Those are just some examples. Get to know the characters. Notice the structure. Why? Why did this happen? You're going to have that person be like, there were too many voices. And somebody else is going to say, be like, well, okay, but did somebody, you can say, who liked all those voices? And there's always going to be at least one. You say, okay, why? Why would the author tell it with multiple points of view? Or some people say, I wish I had other people's point of view. Then we talk about why. Why didn't we? What did the author do? It helps deflect the I didn't like it to the why the author did it. That structure of the book is extremely discussable. These authors gave their heart and soul to produce these books. They wrote them in a certain way. Use that to your advantage. While you're preparing, you should also be thinking about read-alikes and comparisons to other works by that author, or maybe read-alikes for the book. Some people bring those to the discussion ahead of time, and some groups prefer that. My group loved coming up with read-alikes as we were doing the discussion. They had a lot of fun being like, this reminded me of this. And then I provide in my post report more read-alikes for them. That's the way they like it. But again, some groups like you to bring them ahead of time. Do what works best for your group dynamic. But my best advice is to step out of your library and book-centric worldview. And this is where you're going to re-energize yourself and your group the best. With TED Talks, that is a link to all the TED Talks that are tagged books. It leads you far away, though, as you go, because that tag is very loose. But you can see people talking about a book they loved or sharing an experience with a certain book. It really energizes you and gives you a sense of how people talk about books, maybe people that aren't librarians necessarily. Business resources are a great example, too, to step out for preparing for the discussion. That link goes to an article in Forbes, which is about bringing customers back. Remember, I told you at the very first, one of the first slides, that you need to keep them coming back for more? Step out of the library world. It's not just the food and the good books that brings them back. Some of them it's enough. There's other ways you can keep people coming back for more, and there's an example there. I'm going to give you some more, but I just want to let you know that that is a link there. Now, here we go. You want to change up the resources you consult to prepare. Those are my best resources, again, that you need to look at. Other ideas I have, look at author interviews. See what the author has said about his or her book. I mentioned this earlier. Look at the 5-star and the 1-star reviews. I do this every single time I finish a book for book discussion, but before I lead the discussion, because I want to see the people who loved the book, and I want to see the people who hated the book, and I want to be prepared with counter opinions for either. And there's no better way than to read an actual person with that opinion. But again, look at author websites, newspapers, web-based journals, etc. Just do a broad search on the author or the book to get yourself ideas. You should always check the Internet Movie Database or Early Word to see if a book is or will be a movie. Both of those will have information about that. You should also gather maps or any information about setting or historical period if it is necessary. If your book really relies on that, we want to make sure we have that. I would bring an iPad or my phone to the meeting, and we would be able to, and then people started to get more and more of their own smartphones. So we'd all bring up a website and we'd look at it together, which was great. Some people I've seen bring a laptop and put it on the screen. But read notes of other book discussion groups. There's my notes that I do for the Adult Reading Roundtable Book Discussion Leadership Training. And then on RA for All, I have detailed notes about what my group has discussed and how we talked about it. If there are spoilers, I always put spoilers there. Again, those are really popular for other book groups to read to see how an actual book group discussed the book. And my people in my book group loved it because if they missed a discussion, they could go back and sort of recreate the discussion. Okay, but besides reading the book and thinking about it, those are those things you can do to help yourself. The focus is on outside the box. And, and before I go further, and this has to do with questions too, you need to make sure you decide for yourself when you gather the information that I talked about in the previous slide and or the questions. I know I advocated doing a lot of it before you finish the book, in some cases before you read it, but there's no correct answer. Whatever works best for you. Oh, there's the book I couldn't remember, The Secret Rescue. Whatever works best for you at the time you're preparing is what you should do. All right. Let's talk about gathering questions. I've mentioned questions a few times. Here's what I want to tell you how to find them or how I feel about discussion questions. I know some leaders who refuse to use the publisher's questions ever and only want to write their own questions. And I know some leaders who only use the publisher's discussion questions and never write their own questions. I'm here to tell you that there, again, meet in the middle. I think that there's a reason to have those publisher discussion questions in front of you. But every time I make discussion questions, I first print out if there are publisher-provided book discussion questions. Lit Lovers has all of that. But I also always go to Lit Lovers, and that is a direct link to their page for when there are no discussion questions fiction, when there are no discussion questions nonfiction. And you go and you look at those. They're very general questions. How did the main character make you feel? What did you think of the setting? And then I write them into questions that are good for my book that I just read. But here's my pro tip. I look at both of those lists, whether the book is fiction or nonfiction. In fact, some of my best discussion questions that I've come up with, and I had the best discussions, not because I came up with them, but because we had the best discussion, was because I used that nonfiction, the question for when you don't have a question for nonfiction. It's a lot of words of question. For a fiction book. When you click through, you'll see. And I actually have examples because I post original questions when there aren't any that I've created using those tips from Lit Lovers. Bury Me Standing, Assassination Vacation, and The Secret Rescue are some of the examples. Those are some of my most popular posts also. You click on those and you get to my discussions. But also, that's a point to make. Other libraries have done the book. When you Google it, don't just go to Lit Lovers. If it's not there, Google, Bury Me Standing book discussion questions, and my blog comes up when you do that. And I get people emailing me all the time, thanking me for having those questions posted. All I ask is that you say where you got them. But don't forget to look at schools. I've been shocked at where I found discussion questions on high school websites for books like The Secret Rescue. And I can take those questions and turn them into book discussion questions for my audience, because they're different for a school. So make sure you're aware of that. Okay, I love this. It happens every time. We're almost at the end of our time together. We have less than half an hour left, and I'm just now getting to the part about leading the discussion. I do that that's important to note. I do that on purpose because the best book discussion groups require all that work outside the discussion itself. That work on the group dynamic, that work on picking the right books, that work on preparing yourself to be the best facilitator you can be. And the time you spend actually discussing the book is really over in a blink of an eye compared to everything else. But take a breath. You've done all the work that will make a good discussion, and you are ready for anything they can throw at you. And here are a couple tips I use to make it go as smoothly as possible. I like to get in the room first, pick a seat where I want, where I can see everybody and get comfortable. You can stand up as people start filling in, but sitting down for a brain-clearing moment before you let people in is always a great way for me to start. Begin with that interesting information about the book or the author that you found in your preparation, but not something that they could have found in the book. Let them start that discussion. Let them. Don't steal their thunder. That stuff is for the discussion. If there's any supplementary material, which I rarely have, maybe 10% of the time, hand it out if necessary. Make the first question easy. Also, pick a question that encourages a large response. I also like to do the same question at the beginning each time. I'm going to give you an example question I do. I just want to make it clear, though, to be devil's advocate, I've had people who are very smart and talented book discussion leaders have told me they disagree with this as the first choice, but I found it worked for me because it made people take a stand from the start. I've had great luck asking everyone to vote by a show of hands whether they liked, disliked, or were so-so on the book. Did you like the book or not like the book? And I'd have people who wouldn't raise their hand for either. I added so-so. My group was trained so well they knew they had to vote, and they came in saying, I had to think about this before I came in, what my vote was going to be. And other people who say, I thought about that as I was reading. I'm like, this is going to be a no vote for me. And by the time I finished it, I was like, this is a yes. I loved it. Because they're thinking about it. What it does is it lets me know what the tenor of the room is. Okay, I've got mostly liked, so I've got to be ready to make sure that those disliked get a chance to talk, and I got to remember those one-star reviews, and maybe I printed them out if I don't remember them well, the arguments of why people didn't like it, to help make the conversation balanced. But also, I can start calling on someone right away. I usually call on the minority first, so they get a chance to speak before they're overshouted by the majority. So I don't even have to do the, hey, we're remembering to share and listen. I can just start with, let's ask the people who didn't like it why they didn't. The other thing this does is it brings up the major issues right at the start. Characters who were despised or loved, controversial plot points. So I get somebody to say, I just didn't like it because I hated Bryony. So let's say, okay, did someone love Bryony over there? Is that why you loved it? And we can get the discussion going right away. But I make sure I let people, a smattering of people on each side talk right away. There have been books where everyone wanted to say something. I don't force them all to say something. I do that at the end. And they can say, hey, this is why I loved it, but that's why I hated it. And I get a lot of issues coming up. Okay, anybody else? Why they loved it? Is it a different reason? Why did you dislike it for a different reason? I know the major issues and themes where I'm going to go first because those were the initial reactions. It's the first thing they wanted to get out and share, and that's where I'm going to start. That's very important. I jot down notes. I make sure I let people know we'll get back to it. This goes with the major point that you're going with the flow. Someone may bring up a theme that you had as number 6 on your sheet, but if there are passionate feelings about it and you can judge this by how they come out at the beginning, I really let everyone do a brain dump at the beginning. It's a total brain dump, so I get all the things that are in the front of their mind out, and then I know right away I'm going to go to that question 10. I had that as question 10. Normally would save talking about what the title means toward the end, but if the title is great and it's coming up right away, we go into it immediately. Your list of questions is a guide, not the rule. And then I already mentioned this, but when you bring those 5-star and 1-star reviews, you want to make sure you're ready to play devil's advocate to keep the equation balanced in the discussion. That is your job as a facilitator. Okay, but let's keep going. Make sure you're also looking around the room at everyone when you're talking, when you talk, so that you can see reactions. Make sure that they know you're talking to the group and not just responding to one specific person's comments. That will also help facilitate a larger dialogue. It will also help keep those beavers in check, which I'm mentioning. You want to make sure that the group norms say, be ready to share and listen. I call on people if they haven't talked. I'm encouraging participation. But people who have been quiet, maybe about 2/3 of the way through, I look at them and I say, hey, was there anything you wanted to say? Stella, you've been quiet. Is there anything you want to share? To give them a chance. And everyone participates by voting at the beginning. And at the end, I go around the room and ask people to actually give me a word or phrase to describe the book. And that is a great way to have everyone participate. And it ensures that they've had a chance to voice their opinions. I don't require participation, but I do make sure that people who haven't participated have a chance if they would like to. Now, those eager beavers who participate too much are a tricky subject. Don't ignore them, but realize that others may be upset that they can't get a word in edgewise, or they're afraid to disagree with a dominant person, which I have seen. Now, again, you have those norms to help you out. Use them. Remind people to be ready to share and listen. Stop dominant participants with phrases like, okay, remember we agreed to this. Let's do some self-censoring. Why don't you listen for a bit? You've been sharing a lot. With norms, it's way less awkward to control these situations because if they're really bad, and I've done this, you hold up the norm to be like, halt, I am taking control of the group. We have gone off track. But they know that could happen. They've agreed to it. Everyone has a laugh instead of anyone feeling awkward. I hear people say all the time, I love how you keep control of the group. And, and I've had just about everyone admit to me that they took it off the rails at one point or other because they're taking ownership for their part in that group. Okay, begin new lines of discussion promptly. I read ahead of my notes or question sheet as I feel a topic beginning to peter out, so I'm ready to go with a new topic right away. When disagreements occur, and they will, make sure you let each person state his or her opinion. Do not allow voices to be raised and tempers to flare. Make it clear that no one is right or wrong. Also, again, as I mentioned before, remind people to when I redirect the anger, when you're angry at something, it's because of the author. Let's stop. It's not real. I've said that so many times. These people are not real. They're in a fictional book. So why did the author create this fictional person this way? And we have a discussion about that. Another potential roadblock to a successful book discussion is people who go on way too much about their personal life. Just be on guard for this and keep the balance between personal revelation and reaction and then responses to the book itself. Although some nice sidetracks have gone on that we learned about. One lady in the 1960s spent as a high security clearance secretary at the FBI, and another person who shared their coming out story when we were when she was a young woman. She was older now. That was wonderful. So sometimes if it has to do with the book, you let the personal information go. Girls of Atomic City was where we learned about the high security clearance and how much people knew and didn't know during World War II. So it's great. Also take notes, as I mentioned before, to use now and later, using it to guide the discussion and make sure you know where people are going in areas where people were really maybe need more prodding, character names that keep coming up. And again, later, as I mentioned, you can go back and look at the book group notes and see what your group talked about. Other groups can use it to help them. There's lots of ways it can be done. And my ladies who have left and moved love still staying part of the group by reading that. Okay, well, we're already going back to closing the discussion. You want to keep track of time. You want to make sure, you don't want to make a discussion go longer than it has to, but you also need to make sure, even if people are really into it and losing track of time, they probably have somewhere they need to be. So you need to make sure you're keeping track of time. Also, so you give people a chance for last-minute comments. That's when I always say, is there anything that hasn't come up with about 15 minutes to go if we've gone that far? Sometimes it's earlier if the book doesn't have a lot to discuss. Anything else anybody wants to bring up that hasn't come up? Also, make sure you always leave time to speculate on open endings, to talk about titles. I also always try to summarize the important points and reactions that were brought up in our discussion. I think that's important as you're closing it. One way we do that is, like I said, I have everyone go around the room and I actually call on people, and they're used to it, so they're prepared. A word or phrase that describes the book. I start by summarizing words or phrases or themes that came up over and over again. Again, you click on those book discussion reports. You can see how we've compiled those words or phrases, and they're really like appeal terms. But make sure you always thank people for coming and for their participation. Don't underestimate how much people appreciate being thanked. Yes, you're giving them a free book discussion, which is a great experience, but thank them for coming, and most importantly, for participating. I always like to briefly introduce the next book. I think it's really important to do that so that people know what's coming next, which keeps them coming back for more, which leads me to that slide. Again, writing up a summary of the book discussion really keeps them coming back for more, because maybe you miss it because you're busy. Once you miss one, I have a couple ladies who go to Florida in the winter, and once they miss one, it's easy, they miss two because they're away, and they come back and it's easy to forget. It's not part of a routine anymore. But if I'm having those notes, they're still reading the books and checking the discussion notes. In fact, I got a prodding email from one of them that I was behind on getting the book discussion report out. She's like, I'm in Florida. I need to know what happened before I read the next book. And that's great. It keeps them coming back. Again, there was that link a few slides back about looking outside the book world for how to bring customers back. But encourage the participants outside of book club. So encourage them to participate. So beta test groups, use them as a beta test group for new services. I've done that. We had a Holds Without Hassle, like an automatic Holds program years ago we started. And the book group got to be the beta test group where we worked out all the kinks. We've done that for a few things. Get them to join the Friends. I was in charge of the Friends also, and 2 of my board members came from book group. But they're all going to join the Friends. They're all going to be supporters of the library, and use them as volunteers. I use them for things other than just cleaning shelves. Those things where you need to do people you trust, maybe to go behind the scenes, people you want to maybe have at receptions, to greet people. These are people who love the library. They come to book club. They participate. They're going to be positive influences in the outside community for your library, so use them. But my most important thing, and I know I've said it over and over again, that group dynamic. You need to keep your dialogue about your group and how your group is functioning and what is working and what isn't as open as the dialogue that you're having about the book. If you just try to have the best discussion possible from a book-based point of view, you will get in a rut. You will have problems. And you need to think about the group itself and its dynamic. I feel like it's like book club therapy. You have to talk about our problems as a group, but it really works. I've seen it work, and groups have really done well with it. So what I also want to say, and I want to go back real fast about that, to make sure if you're having that dialogue about your group, make sure you're using the norms to control that environment. Maybe your first meeting is to make those norms, but your next meeting, next time you do it, is to do a check-in. Are they working? How did the year go? What kind of changes do we need to make? I have to tell you, if you just make it based on we're creating norms for all of us to follow, and then you have a follow-up, we're talking about how they worked. Yeah, this one didn't work. If you're honest, they'll be honest. But we have a piece of paper in front of us. It makes it so much easier to have those difficult discussions. And that is the end of Recharge Your Book Club. I made sure I left time for plenty of questions. This is my contact information. Again, just remember RA for All, and you can get those slides with those links, or just go to RA for All, which I'm going to put up right now. Not only can you see the ones I provided, but if you want to see every book discussion group that I've ever done, you just have to choose the tag Book Discussion Books, and it'll pull up. So here's one on the Book of Unknown Americans. Okay, so now I will open it to any questions, if anyone has questions.
Okay, Becky, thank you. We do have a few questions that came in. The first of which is I have a mystery book club that has several senior citizens and many younger 40 to 50-year-olds. The problem is that the senior citizens really dislike books that have sex, curse words in them. This makes it
Hmm.
a bit difficult to choose books that will be of interest to all members. So what would you suggest in that scenario?
Sure. My best resource for that is the Mary Higgins Clark Award, which is part of the Edgar Award. So if you go to edgars.com, so Mary Higgins Clark Award are basically books that are written like Mary Higgins Clark. And although she puts children in peril, she doesn't have sex, and I don't think, as far as I know, has any curses in them. And the violence is all off stage. Your protagonist is in peril, children can be in peril. So you need to check on that. Those books, the books on the short list and the award winners, are very discussable, and you can be very confident that they will appeal to that group. I really like that as a resource. Otherwise, I think you have to use that novelist, the book discussion resources, to your advantage, and do a search, maybe for a book that really worked for your group, and maybe find some reader likes that then have those book discussion reports, because those will have those essay question and answer. And then my final advice on that is to look at those one-star reviews on Goodreads, or particularly Amazon, because if you go to one-star reviews, what you find is the reason a person hated the book was one of those limiters. There was too much sex, there was too much violence, and it's mentioned right away. And that's a really good way to find that. But again, the Mary Higgins Clark Award, I have had excellent success. The books are award winners. They have something to discuss, and you can be quite confident that they will be okay.
Okay. These next couple questions came in early, so I don't know if you covered them or not, but maybe to just restate if you did.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the number of people in a book discussion group, how many do you think is too
Yeah.
many, and when you think about maybe having to divide things up or whatever?
And you know what? I did not bring that up purposely, because my first statement is, and I actually have had this discussion with the Rail staff, actually. I'm just putting up the card bigger. I think that the best number, your target number, is between 12 and 15 if you are an intermediate leader. My group would get up to 22. I could handle that. It's difficult if you're not very confident and if you don't have a good group dynamic. But I think if you have fewer than 10, it's very hard to have a discussion. If you're going to have fewer than 10 show up, you need to set your sights lower. And if you scheduled like an hour and a half for a discussion, you should only be talking for, you should say, if we get an hour out of this would be great. 12 to 15 is that sweet spot where there's enough difference of opinion and you can still control. Again, though, it depends on your group dynamic. If you have a lot of people who work well together, and you've worked on that group dynamic, you can add more people. For example, the book discussion group that we're going to have in October, I've told Joe that I can't do more than 30 people maximum, and that's pushing it because in this case, at least, we're all book discussion leaders, so I know that people will be respectful, and it'll be a lot easier to bring people in, because I'll be like, hey, you're not acting like a good leader, so be a better book group person. It'll work better. But yeah, 12 to 15 is that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another question. Let me try to paraphrase this one. I guess the question is really, what do you think about having one consistent leader in a book discussion, a staff member, versus rotating? And I think the situation in this case is when you have multiple staff members who really want to be involved with the book discussion.
That is a great question. It comes up a lot. Unfortunately, I don't have one right or wrong answer. I think it depends on the group. If you're going to have multiple leaders, and sometimes it's because people, like you said, a lot of people want to be involved with book discussions. Number one, can you be discussing that same book multiple different times throughout the month and let different people lead that discussion? I think that's something people don't think about. We have the winter people, and there's 5 people who want to lead book discussions. Why can't we offer the book discussion a few different times? The second thing is, if you are going to trade off who's leading the group, it would be really helpful if the multiple leaders are participants in the group, so they can be part of that group dynamic. I really like that idea for helping with burnout, because if you're in the group, you only have to make your best effort to finish the book. When you're the leader, you have to finish it, but you can still be part of that dynamic. If you are having multiple leaders, It will work if all the leaders meet together at least once a year and talk about how they are going to lead. You want to have, obviously people have different personalities, but you want to have a consistency in how the meetings are going to go, or you're going to have that whole sibling rivalry situation where people like one book discussion member or leader better than another, and they're only going to come when that person's leading. And that is just not, it's not going to help anybody. It's going to cause dysfunction. So if all the leaders are there and agreeing to do, use their own personality but make a certain standard that they're going to follow, and if all the people who are going to be leading are involved with it, that meeting where you're discussing the state of your group and you're having a meeting about the group and going over what's expected from everyone and asking, do you guys like having multiple leaders? Because, again, maybe your staff all love taking turns leading it because it's easier for them, but if the feedback you get back from the group is, we don't like that, it's too jarring for us, they have a say too. This is what I say when I say libraries don't talk about the dynamic enough. Ask them what they'd prefer, and then find other ways for those other people who want to lead the groups to either get groups of their own or to participate in another way. I think that's how you handle that situation. It depends on the group. My group really liked having one leader. The other group, where we discussed the same books on a different time schedule, did not mind if the leadership changed. Sometimes even a participant would lead because they wanted to. Your group has to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we got time for one more. Any tips specific to first starting a book club? And this individual just says that she's been having trouble attracting patrons to come. So suggestions on, I guess, from promotion and how to get people on board in the first place.
Yeah, sure. I used to include that in this webinar, but I had so many questions from people who were leading book discussions and wanted help to keep going. There are a couple ways you can do it. First of all, taking one of those ideas I had, make sure you're surveying library patrons, and again, find like a free library fines, get a local restaurant or store to give a coupon to get people to fill out the survey about we're going to have book clubs, and we want to know what kind of book club you want. One, that lets people know you have book groups, and two, and do it online too, and two, it lets you know what they want to be discussing, and ask about times, because some reason you might be having trouble getting people is maybe the timing is bad. Maybe we had a time when we had the book club, and it was interfering with a big senior lunch that happened once a month. So we moved from the second Monday to the third Monday, and that solved that problem, because the senior lunch was on the second Monday, and that's why people weren't coming to our daytime group. So make sure you're asking about times, you're checking with other groups in the area on when they offer things. And then also promote it in as many places as you can, both in person and online. Make sure that book groups are mentioned at every program, even the one for children, because the parents are there. Make a cute little half-page, quarter-page flyer to hand out. Don't just advertise it at the circulation desk or at the Reader's Advisory desk or the Adult Services desk. Do it everywhere. Get a couple people to come and get them excited about it, and word of mouth builds the group. I have seen groups go down to no people. It's a long story about why it happened. And then we got a new leader, and only 3 people came. They were the diehard people. And then we just kept building it up by, like I said, handing out flyers everywhere, putting it on Twitter, putting it on Facebook. Hey, did you know we had a book club? Here's the book we're reading. Having the books to hand out, interlibrary loaning a ton of them, book talking the book discussion group at the circulation desk, and having circulation hand them a book. Just try it. Maybe you can come with a flyer in it. Few obstacles toward participating as possible. If you put the book in their hand with a flyer, they show up.
All right, and right on the nose, 11:30. So a few things. As I think I mentioned at the outset, we did record this, so you guys will be able to come back to it, though Becky is going to do this webinar again on September 28th. This will be 2 weeks from today, though it'll be afternoon, so if you have any colleagues that couldn't make it to this one, they will have that opportunity then. And again, October 6th is when we'll be doing book discussion for book discussion leaders, talking about Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. Again, in Burr Ridge, but also if you're not near Burr Ridge, you'll have a few other places, East Peoria, Coal Valley, Vernon area, public library are going to be places where you can participate via video conferencing. And I will also add, we got a good number of books that you guys chatted in terms of unique titles, but I'm going to just let the webinar go for about 5 more minutes. So if you didn't and have a good unique title or two, as Becky said before, she would love to hear your suggestions. So feel free to use your question pane to give us a title or two before you get out, and then we'll be able to compile all those. So I think that's all I got. So Becky, thank you. A lot of good information today that hopefully folks will be able to take back and recharge their book discussion group.
Thanks all for coming.
All right. Have a good day and a good week, everybody. Take care.